Good morning. Before we begin the main portion of today's press conference, there are a few items I'd like to address. I want to briefly recognize that today is the 5-year anniversary of the tragic shooting in Newtown, Connecticut, that killed 20 young, beautiful children and 6 staff members at Sandy Hook Elementary School. We have not forgotten, nor shall we forget. And we will never stop working to prevent senseless gun violence and improve the safety of our communities. On behalf of the State Senate, I offer my deepest and most sincere condolences and my prayers for the families still struggling with the loss of a child or a loved one. I also have to take a moment to acknowledge the devastation unfolding in Southern California due to the Thomas Fire. Our thoughts and prayers are with the many firefighters and first responders on the scene risking their lives to protect local residents and property. Unfortunately, Senator Hannah-Beth Jackson could not be here this morning because her neighborhood currently remains under the threat of evacuation. And finally, I would be doing a grave disservice to my constituents and millions of Americans if I did not take this opportunity to highlight the deeply concerning action this morning by the Federal Communications Commission. Voting to repeal net neutrality directly contradicts the will of the vast majority of Americans. We cannot allow the profits and political interests of internet service providers to outweigh the public interest in a free and open internet. It's too important to our economy and our way of life. And if the Trump administration won't protect consumers, the state of California will. When we reconvene in January, I will work with Speaker Rendon and our colleagues in the Assembly to do everything we can to protect a free and open internet for all Californians. Now for the business at hand, I have with me today Senator Holly Mitchell, the chair of the Senate Budget Committee. I'd like to invite also with us Mr. Ben Wagner of Gibson, Dunn & Crutcher, Gail Hepner of Cal Casa, Beth Hassett of Weave to join me here today, as well as Deborah Maddox from Van Dermiden Maddox. Thank you. Thanks to the courage and the fortitude of countless women, and no doubt some men, who refuse to remain silent, America is finally reckoning with entrenched inequities in our personal and professional relationships and in workplaces of every type. Over the past weeks and months, the Senate has been reflecting on working to change not just our policies and procedures, but our workplace culture, to ensure that victims' needs are met, that perpetrators are held to account, that we have a system in place that victims can trust, that is free from political interference, with transparency, safeguards against retaliation, and clear expectations for all employees and supervisors who do our business in our capital. Within a week of the We Said Enough campaign's launch in October, the Senate took the extraordinary step of moving all current and future sexual harassment complaints and investigations into an independent process led by third-party experts in the field. And we have actively met with the Assembly, the Legislative Women's Caucus, stakeholders, and experts in the field of trauma-informed recovery to define our guiding principles as we move forward. I want to especially thank Weave and Cal Casa for sharing their wealth of knowledge and expertise. I'm extremely grateful to you and the work that you do. We have worked together for years on legislation, and yet I continue to be amazed by your depth of knowledge and dedication to victims. With the guidance of trained professionals at these renowned organizations, the Senate is the first legislative body in the nation to pursue victim-centered reforms. Today, I am proud to announce that the next steps in this process. First, a bipartisan panel of senators has retained a team of attorneys from the two law firms of Gibson, Dunn and Crutcher and Van der Meiden, Maddox, to serve as independent counsel to investigate allegations of sexual harassment and similar misconduct involving members or employees of the State Senate. The team will handle all future complaints and investigations and will maintain a 24-hour hotline available for victims to report misconduct. I want to thank Senator Atkins, Senator Bates, Senator Holly Mitchell, Senator Leyva, and Senator Monning for the time that they invested in that hiring process. These firms will also be conducting the investigation into the allegations against Senator Mendoza, which will be completed early next year. I have spoken with Senator Mendoza and have asked him to take a leave of absence pending the outcome of that investigation. The Senate will additionally be partnering with Weave to provide Senate employees with access to trauma-informed counseling. This initiative will be modeled after the successful partnership between Weave and the Los Rios Community College District, in which Weave serves as confidential advocate regarding issues of sexual violence and harassment. All communications between the reporting individual and the Weave advocate will be entirely confidential. The Senate will not have access to information provided to that advocate, nor should we. The Weave partnership will include records on the types and number of incidences reported and hours of counseling in each case. Personal data about victims and the accused will be unidentifiable. Weave, as well as CASA, will also work in partnership with the Senate Rules Committee to develop trauma-informed sexual assault and violence prevention training materials for all senators, Senate staff, and employees. Unlike the U.S. Congress, which only began offering training this year, the Senate has provided sexual harassment training since 1993. But clearly, we need to do more. The Senate will work with the Assembly to ensure all legislative employees have the protections they need to feel safe and respected in their workplace, including finding a legally sound path to enshrine these protections into statute. We will also require that employers track and retain records of sexual harassment complaints. The Senate Judiciary Committee, as well as the Select Committee on Women, Work, and Families, will also hold hearings related to sexual harassment. Sexual harassment is a problem that extends to every workplace in California. It can affect everyone from janitors, hotel workers, and farm workers to famous actors and actresses, and yes, legislative employees. The Judiciary Committee will examine if California's laws provide all of these people, no matter their socioeconomic background, full protection. Finally, the Senate is working with the Assembly as well as the Legislative Women's Caucus on a bicameral climate survey. The survey will be sent to employees in the coming months and will help identify any deficiencies in our response. To be perfectly clear, this is just the beginning of a long road to overhaul the way the California legislature handles complaints of sexual harassment. We want all stakeholders to be involved in this process, and we will continue to have an open door policy as we gather information and move forward with the next steps. However, this issue is too important to wait. The Senate remains committed to working with the Assembly to adopt a unified bicameral approach. We're committed to implementing a safe and confidential reporting process and a trauma-informed support system that our employees and everyone who does business in this building can trust. And I hope our reforms will serve as a model for other state legislative bodies, as well as the U.S. Congress moving forward. I'd like to say a few words now in Spanish. Ahora, unas palabras en español. Es hora de ponerle fin a una cultura imperante de acoso sexual a todos los niveles en los diferentes lugares de trabajo, incluyendo el gobierno. Por esa razón quiero agradecer en especial a las organizaciones WEAVE y CalCasa por compartir su conocimiento y experiencia. Me enorgullece anunciar los próximos pasos concretos y fijos en este proceso. Un panel bipartidista de senadores ha contratado a las firmas de abogados Gibson, Dunn, y Crutcher, y Van der Meiden Maddox, quienes trabajarán independientemente del Senado y se encargarán de todas las quejas e investigaciones futuras. Esta firma mantendrá una línea directa disponible las 24 horas para que las víctimas denuncien una mala conducta. Esta firma también llevará a cabo la investigación de las alegaciones contra el senador Tony Mendoza, que se completará a principios del próximo año. Este es el primer cuerpo legislativo de la nación de buscar asistencia orientada al trauma. El Senado, además, se asociará con la corporación no lucrativa WEAVE para proporcionar a los empleados del Senado acceso a consejería orientada al trauma. Todas las comunicaciones entre la persona que presenta el informe y el asesor de WEAVE serán completamente confidenciales. El Senado no tendrá acceso a la información provista al consejero. La asociación con WEAVE incluirá registros sobre los tipos y la cantidad de incidentes denunciados para los datos personales de las víctimas que no serán identificables. Espero que nuestras reformas servirán como modelo para otros legisladores estatales y el Congreso de los Estados Unidos a futuro. Muchas gracias. With that, I'd like to bring up to the podium the chairwoman of the Senate Budget Committee, Ms. Holly Mitchell, who has been very instrumental in informing me and guiding me during the course of this process, as well as other senators. She's played a vital role in the process to interview a number of legal organizations that have applied to become the independent branch for the process of investigating sexual harassment cases. And Ms. Holly Mitchell.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Good morning, everybody. The Pro Tem in his remarks outlined what is clearly a multi-step, multi-pronged process that he and his team have led for the Senate in really reframing and expanding upon the way in which the Senate Rules Committee will receive information and respond to harassment. My role and the role of my colleagues, that the Pro Tem shared the names, those of us who served in this committee, we had a narrowly defined mission. So our singular piece in this overall process that he's outlined really was to interview and identify and make a recommendation on the law firm who would lead this investigation. We interviewed 8 law firms in total, each with a depth of experience in employment law and trained in doing investigations. Within this cohort of 8, there were large firms, small boutique firms, firms with international presence, and some small firms with as few as 25 attorneys. We had a set of uniform questions that we posed to each law firm that we felt would elicit a better understanding of each firm's capabilities. Questions such as their approach to sexual harassment and investigations, their use of best practices, attorneys within the firm that specialize in the field, their number, the breadth of their experience, and any unique attributes that could assist in understanding how they go about their work. We developed the panel a set of criteria that we felt would help us make the best decision on behalf of the institution. We pondered and made the decision based on really perceived bias, internal or external. We wanted to make sure that the firm had experience in representing public entities. We looked at capacity, the number of attorneys, where they were statewide, to make sure that we would have appropriate reach statewide if indeed investigations need to take place in the far reaches of the state of California. We really wanted to get a sense of fit, if they had the capacity or experience in understanding the unique and not so unique needs of a legislative entity. And of course, we looked at competence and expertise. As a result, the committee came to the conclusion and made the recommendation that 2 firms who presented as a partner would be the firm that we would identify that the Senate use for investigative purposes only. Again, As a result, the Rules Committee has now retained the two law firms of Gibson, Dunn & Crutcher and Vandermeiden Maddox to serve as independent counsel to investigate allegations of sexual harassment and similar misconduct involving members or employees of the California State Senate. They will report their findings to the Rules Committee. These attorneys, who've been retained for a period of 2 years, will work together to conduct thorough, independent, and prompt investigations of allegations of misconduct. You will hear today from the principals from the two firms who will be the lead on investigations here in the Senate, Mr. Benjamin Wagner and Deborah Maddox. Mr. Wagner has been with Gibson Dunn. He's based in California. Again, Gibson Dunn is a global full-service law firm with an international reputation for excellence. It's particularly well known for its experience in conducting internal investigations. The Gibson Dunn attorneys, again, will be led by Mr. Wagner, who's a managing partner of the firm's Palo Alto office, and who spent 24 years as a federal prosecutor based in Sacramento. The Vandermeiden Maddox firm is a Sacramento-based employment law firm that focuses almost exclusively on investigations of workplace misconduct, including harassment, retaliation, sexual assault, whistleblower complaints, and other allegations of unprofessional conduct. They've handled a wide range of high-profile and sensitive matters involving alleged misconduct by high-level officials and employees. The attorneys from that firm will be led by Deborah Maddox, the senior managing partner. You will hear in their presentation, the first person you'll hear from is Mr. Wagner, followed by Ms. Maddox. You'll hear in their presentation the fact that as of today, it will go live. They've established an 800 number that will serve as a hotline where Senate employees can call in and independently report any concerns around misconduct that will then be involved in the investigation. Mr. Wagner?
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Mitchell, Senator De León. My name is Benjamin Wagner. I'm, as you heard from Senator Mitchell, I'm currently the managing partner of the Silicon Valley office of Gibson, Dunn & Crutcher, and I'm going to be working on this matter closely with my co-counsel, Deborah Maddox, from the Vandermeiden Maddox firm. As you heard from Senator Mitchell, Gibson Dunn is a global law firm. We have over 1,000 attorneys. We have 5 offices here in California and 15 more around the world. We have a well-known expertise in conducting internal investigations. It's really one of our specialties. We also have a renowned labor and employment section, and the firm has handled a wide variety in the private sector, a wide variety of internal investigations and other matters involving sexual harassment allegations and similar misconduct. So prior to joining Gibson Dunn last year, I was, as Senator Mitchell mentioned, I was a federal prosecutor for 24 years, based here in Sacramento. In 2009, I was appointed by President Obama to be the United States Attorney for the Eastern District of California. In that capacity, I oversaw all federal, criminal, and civil investigations in this region of California. Many of those were national in scope. And in my 24 years as a federal prosecutor, I've conducted a large number of investigations into a wide range of corporate misconduct, public corruption, financial crimes, and other complex and sensitive investigations. The Gibson Dunn team will also include my partner Rachel Brass from the San Francisco office, who is a renowned litigator with a national reputation and is a member of our labor and employment group, and she's also an adjunct professor at the Berkeley Law School. It's an honor and a privilege to have been selected in the course of this process to work on this important issue. Deborah and I want to encourage members of the Senate, employees of the Senate, members of the public, lobbyists, and other people who have any information about any instances of sexual harassment by members or employees of the Senate to provide that information. As Ms. Maddox will indicate in a moment, we have a 1-800 number. We're working also on a internet mechanism to report information, and people can contact our firms directly. We want to encourage people to provide that information to us. We will take that information seriously. We've been retained as independent counsel. We're going to pursue these investigations as independently, and we are going to pursue them promptly and thoroughly and with fairness to both the complainants, the witnesses, and the persons who are accused. We'll endeavor to conduct these investigations as promptly as we can, consistent with a thorough result, and then we will provide our findings in each matter to the Senate for further action. So let me turn it over now to Deborah Maddox, my co-counsel.
Thank you, Ben. Good morning. My name is Deborah Maddox. I'm the managing partner of Vandermeiden Maddox, which is a Sacramento-based firm. You've heard that we do almost exclusively workplace investigations. This is our area. We've been doing it. I've been doing this work exclusively for over a decade. And those include all sorts of employee misconduct, including sexual abuse, assault, and harassment. I'm assisted by a full team of attorney investigators who are trauma trained and understand the landscape when you're dealing with complaints about sexual harassment. I have personally conducted hundreds and hundreds of investigations into these types of claims, and many times I have sustained those claims, and sometimes I have not. But in every case, the facts are the guide, and we follow the evidence where it takes us. And Ben and I are clear in our charge with our respective teams that if complaints are raised, we will conduct thorough, fair, impartial investigations of the claim, and we're going to do that in a manner that is respectful to all of the parties involved. As Ben said, it's worth repeating, we really encourage people who've been the victims of harassment, who've seen it, who've heard about it, to please contact us and give us that information. We want people to come forward so that a meaningful inquiry can be conducted. To that end, my firm will be monitoring the hotline. I'm going to give you the number now. It's my hope that all of you will take this out and publish it so that it's known that this number exists. It's 1-800-729-1443. And I'll repeat it because I see some of you writing. 1-800-729-1443. We will monitor that hotline. We will follow up on all information that we receive. People who leave information there and contact information and want to call back will receive it from one of our attorney investigators. We recognize the importance of this work. A rigorous and fair fact-finding really is essential for the Senate to meet its goal of ensuring a workplace that's free of harassment for both its employees and the public that it serves. And again, we want you to all partner with us in becoming part of that effort. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Ms. Maddox and Mr. Wagner. Next, I'd like to bring to the podium the CEO of Weave, and that is Beth Hassett. Beth.
Good morning. And thank you to the Senate leaders whose efforts are creating a victim-centered response to addressing sexual harassment and assault for Senate employees. Weave has been a safe place for victims of sexual violence to seek support and assistance for 30 years. And I know firsthand that the decision for a survivor to share her story is equal parts risk and courage. The more than 140 women who signed on to the We Said Enough letter found the courage, took the risk, and gave voice to thousands of survivors in California. Starting in January, Weave will provide a confidential advocate who will be accessible to senators and Senate staffers through a confidential telephone number, confidential email address, and in-person appointments at a nearby office. The confidential advocate will provide emotional support, will discuss reporting options, and will offer internal and external resources to senators and Senate staffers who've experienced sexual misconduct. Additionally, we will educate senators, staffers, and those interfacing with them about sexual misconduct in an effort to change the culture of the Capitol community and ensure victim safety. Weave offers survivor-centered and trauma-informed services with an assurance of confidentiality, which is not available through any other partnership. As the sole rape crisis center for Sacramento County, we are the only local organization that can employ paid and volunteer sexual assault counselors, as defined in California Evidence Code sections 1035 and 1036, and California Penal Code sections 13837 and 13838. The Evidence Code details the specific requirements for an individual to be recognized as a sexual assault counselor. These include completing a 40-hour training program in the counseling of sexual assault victims, which must be conducted by a state-funded rape crisis center, and working under and being supervised by a rape crisis center. We have modeled this partnership with the Senate on our successful partnership with Los Rios. And for 2 years, we have been providing services to the students who are seeking a safe place to report confidentially what they have experienced. For our partnership with the Senate, we've chosen a Weave employee who is a sexual assault counselor with specialized training and experience in the fields of sexual assault and domestic violence, including working as a counselor, educator, and advocate. The staff member brings the experience, commitment, and compassion that state employees deserve. This collaboration is an important first step in creating a safe and respectful workplace for all Capitol staffers. I believe our collective efforts are unprecedented and will offer a model of response replicable in any workplace in California and within any state in the nation. Californians can take pride in the commitment to creating equity and safety in the workplace that is being demonstrated here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hassett. Last, we have the Director of Operations from CalCasa, and that is Gail Hepner. Ms. Hepner.
Thank you, Senator de León. The California Coalition Against Sexual Assault, CalCasa, provides leadership, vision, and resources to rape crisis centers, individuals, and entities that are committed to preventing and ending sexual violence. No industry is untouched by sexual harassment, and now is the time for crucial institutional change to improve training, reporting processes, and policies. Providing confidential victim advocates and impartial investigation processes are critical first steps to preventing sexual harassment and violence in the Capitol using a trauma-informed lens. Trauma-informed approaches support survivors of sexual violence by recognizing the trauma, responding appropriately, and actively resisting re-traumatization. CalCasa believes that lasting change in the landscape of sexual harassment and violence requires workplaces to look at their environment and their culture and take the necessary steps to interrupt and prevent sexual harassment. CalCasa looks forward to further partnerships to improve the system's response to sexual violence and sexual harassment. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Before we open it up to questions that the Pro Tem will lead, I just wanted to also say that you've seen the structure we've put in place and beginning to put in place in terms of creating a safe opportunity for victims to come forward, to create a structure in which independent, thorough investigations can take place. But I have to say, as a female member of this House, many of you have asked me repeatedly if I've experienced harassment, and my response continues to be the same. I'm a 53-year-old black woman in America who's worked her entire adult life. We all have. And in that vein, I think it's also important that we acknowledge that we have a commitment, a strong commitment, to work towards preventing harassment. We've all read and we understand that sometimes in male-dominated arenas, where men are in power, or when men perceive their power as unchecked, that harassment takes place. Please know that we will continue to work, in addition to what you've heard about today, to prevent harassment and create a culture in which women are valued, women are perceived as equals, and that employees also have mutual respect of each other within the confines of the Senate family.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mitchell. You've heard from Mr. Wagner, as well as Ms. Maddox, as well as the wonderful leaders of Weave, Ms. Hassett and Ms. Hepner from CalCasa, as well as our esteemed Chair of the Budget Committee, Ms. Holly Mitchell. We'd like to entertain the questions that you will have.
Senator, the media recently learned that in the Assembly, they do not track or keep records of complaints brought forward against lawmakers, only investigations. Can you tell us, does the Senate keep an existing record of complaints that have been made against lawmakers? And beyond the allegations against Tony Mendoza, can you tell us how wide the scope of existing complaints that have been brought forward and gone through the process are against Senate lawmakers?
Let me say this. The answer is yes. One, I believe that several organizations here have submitted their lower request. I will say this, that I'm taking the unprecedented step as the leader of this House to move forward with furnishing the information that has been requested to reporters, to journalists. And we're also working very closely with the Assembly Rules Committee. Like I said, I've directed the Senate Rules Committee to move forward. We're going to protect the names of the victims themselves. I want to be very clear about that. I've directed the Senate Rules Committee to also work closely with the Assembly Rules Committee to provide that information that has been requested. So this is an unprecedented step.
So
But
providing the names of lawmakers that have been the target of past
we will.
investigations?
I will say this is that I think in part of changing that culture is to be more transparent body. Part of changing culture is to work closely, obviously, with the press. So this is unprecedented, but we'll be moving forward with that.
Did Mendoza agree to step down?
It's an ongoing conversation still that we're having. I've had the conversation with him this morning. I strongly suggested that he take a leave of absence pending the final outcome of the investigation, which is my hope that will be finalized sometime early next year. I don't want to prejudge the outcome of the investigation itself, but I do believe that it is the right thing to do at this moment, to step down, at least take a moment, I should say, take a leave of absence until the pending investigation is finalized.
Senator, you mentioned, Mike Lurie from KC3, you mentioned transparency in the process here. Many of these settlements involve non-disclosure agreements. Can you address that and also just the cost to taxpayers of how much is going out the door?
I want to be very clear about NDAs, non-disclosure agreements. To my understanding, with regards to making an internal assessment of the sexual harassment claims that have been substantiated, there have been no NDAs, non-disclosure agreements. Non-disclosure agreements specifically that pertain to the Senate have been only dealt with termination of employment due to performance issues.
What about non-disparagement clauses, which are different from non-disclosure?
That I'm not going to answer that question because I don't have the answer to your question right there between the non-disparagement and non-disclosure. I don't want to play hide the ball with you. I just don't know the answer to your question.
What about the dollars, the hundreds of thousands of dollars that have gone out previously in settlements?
That will be announced. Yeah.
You release all settlements,
I understand that.
so you know every dime that's been spent.
Right, and that's what I'm asking you to address.
The answer is
With
yes.
these with these new measures that you're implementing today, with the partnership with Weave, et cetera, will that help to protect taxpayers in the future?
Well, I think so, because I think when you change it, well, there's two things. One is the release of the actual dollar settlements. That has always been the case here in the California State Senate. With regards to prospectively in the future, working closely with CalCasa, working closely with Weave, could that perhaps, decrease the number of settlements in the immediate or foreseeable future? I believe the answer is resoundingly yes, because as Senator Mitchell just mentioned a few moments ago, this is not just about implementing protocols and procedures that are unprecedented for this institution, but it's also about changing culture. That's more long-lasting. It's my hope that when I'm gone, that you have a culture that's sustainable for the foreseeable future. We still deal with issues that are systemic in nature. Race inequities, gender pay inequities. We have laws that are on the books that are either A, ignored altogether or violated. Culture has always been much more stubborn to change. This is about really taking a holistic, an honest, a transparent approach and really trying to change the culture. That to answer your question, I would believe immediately that any type of settlement would decrease quite dramatically.
I think it is fair to assume that once the hotline number goes public and the investigations begin, that there could be an increase in contacts with the attorneys. And that, for me and the committee that helped select them, is a good sign, because that means people are comfortable and confident in the process, and they're willing to engage and use it. So I think there will very likely be an increase in outreach to the investigators. But as the Pro Tem said, in the long run, we are putting measures in place to reduce ultimate cost to the taxpayer.
Can you describe how
Can I go here? Can I go there?
investigated allegations against Tony Mendoza rigorously for 6 weeks?
I can say, but I can say this is that historically, the Senate Rules Committee, through HR, Human Resources, and through outside counsel, have conducted these types of investigations. It was in the middle of this investigation without any finality, without completion. We stopped that. I stopped that investigation through Senate HR, and I wanted to make sure that I turn over that investigation to an independent counsel outside of the realm of the Senate Rules Committee. And that outside counsel, as was announced today, is through Ms. Maddox as well as Mr. Wagner. So that case, that pending case, will be transferred over. They will themselves will handle that investigation.
Stephen Oron said that these firms would not have any prior or existing relationship.
Say one more time.
You guys previously said you'd be looking for firms who didn't have any prior or existing relationship with senators. It's clear that at least one of the firms has their employees have contributed money to at least 6 sitting senators. So can you explain kind of that and why that wasn't a problem for you?
Well, I don't know which 6 senators that you're referring to. This is news to me. However, I believe that whether
Gibson, Dunn, and Crutcher have given $95,000 in contributions to California candidates in the last 5 years, including $17,000 to Senate candidates, Morlock, Hertzberg, Wiener, Stern, Allen, and Strauss.
Okay, this is the first time I've heard of this. I can assure you this. During the request for proposal, they did a thorough interview process with many law firms who submitted their request for proposal. We have utmost confidence in the law firm of Gibson, Dunn, and Crutcher. They are professional. You just heard from Mr. Wagner, who's a former U.S. attorney for the Eastern District here in the city of Sacramento, appointed by then President Barack Obama, the managing partner at the Palo Alto office. I have confidence that they will be fair and judicious across the board for those individuals who are the victims and those who are the accused. So we have confidence. I don't believe that the contribution in itself that you just itemized is going to interfere in their independent objective process of conducting what should be a fair and thorough investigation of any type of claim.
You said multiple times that you look forward to working with the Assembly for a bicameral, unified approach to dealing with this issue. But the measures you announced today are specific to the Senate. That seems to be a contradictory message, and I wanted to see if you
Well, I don't think it's necessarily, contradictory, Melanie. The reason why I say this is this: the dust hasn't settled yet. Ideally, what we want, what should happen, is that there should be a bicameral approach. There should be uniformity across the board. The rules and the procedures, the protocols that take root in the Senate should also take root in the Assembly, and I believe vice versa as well. I'm in communication with the Speaker himself. We still have ongoing conversations. It's not over. I don't want to criticize the Assembly or the Assembly leadership. We're still in that process right now. It's my hope, it's my goal that we can have a bicameral protocol that serves ultimately the legislative staffers in this building, and I believe we will achieve that.
Senator, do you have buy-in from the We Said Enough campaign? And if so, why don't we see any of their representatives here today?
Well, we have engaged all the stakeholders, including the We Said Enough campaign. A lot of the information, a lot of their advocacy is actually being implemented through the process of these reforms that are unprecedented for this institution, or for that matter, any legislative institution in the United States. So we have received a lot of feedback from them. We've had numerous conversations with them, either in person or via the telephone. So we've gotten a lot of feedback from them, as well as other stakeholders across the board. So it's been everyone, who has been impacted, who has an interest in making sure that we have a protocol system that's set up that is fair and just for everybody. So we have received, I think, very good feedback. And
Did you take too long? The Assembly's already
Why was there?
I don't think a hearing in itself is a manifestation of something that's quantifiable and measurable for a real achievable outcome. Don't confuse the two things. What here are real reforms. These reforms are unprecedented, and they're very real. These are reforms that we want to take root deeply in this institution, not just the protocols and procedures and transparency for reaching out and then having an independent body to investigate and also to having CalCASA and we to be trauma-informed centric. But it's also about changing culture as well. Don't confuse a hearing, you know. But again, going back to what Melanie Mason said earlier today, just a few moments ago, I should say, our goal overall is to make sure that our protocols are done in a bicameral, bipartisan manner across the board. So whether you're an employee on the Assembly side or an employee on the Senate side, we want to make sure it's a bicameral protocol process. It's still achievable. There's no deadline by mid-December 15th or 12th, and if we don't reach that deadline, then all's for naught. There's still plenty of time. I'm working closely with the speaker. He has some ideas as well too, so I think we'll achieve our goal.
It sounds like you're saying that the Rules Committee will take, the investigators will provide their findings to the Rules Committee. So can you clarify that that's still the process? And you're talking a lot about culture change, so how will the culture change when the Rules Committee receives those findings? I don't know if it's been clear that the Rules Committee is acted upon.
Yeah, but let me be very clear about one thing too. We're taking any allegations that are substantiated very, very seriously, and there will be very severe penalties on any individual. No member is either above the law or no member is beyond the reach of these new protocols that will be implemented for this institution, and hopefully, which I do see for both bodies, both the Assembly as well as the Senate.
Senator, can you just clear up just for a moment here, since we haven't talked about it quite yet? With Senator Mendoza, you rented a room in Senator Mendoza's house for a while. Did you see anything? Can you talk about what you have seen or not seen, or what you knew about the accusations against
Sure.
Senator Mendoza? Just clear it up for
What I can say is what I haven't seen. I have never witnessed any behavior that was inappropriate. I have never witnessed any behavior that was out of bounds. Had I witnessed any behavior, I would have addressed it immediately.
So if he does not agree to take the leave of absence, are you prepared to introduce a motion to suspend him or expel him from the Senate?
Well, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I've had the conversation with them earlier today. It was a very constructive conversation. Like I said, I believe it's the right thing to do. It's the fair thing to do, pending the finality of the outcome of the investigation itself. So let me just say that once we cross that bridge, you'll hear from me.
Would the leave of absence be paid? Is that what you offered?
When we cross that bridge, you'll hear from me specifically on that issue.
Senator, do you know when the Laura request will be fulfilled for the Senate and the Assembly for that matter?
Well, let me.
And the second part is, will your name be on any of those complaints?
No, the answer is no. And the answer with regards to the Laura requests, I would say within 30 days.
We should ask for, if you have any reaction to the Dean's report on Senator Hertzberg.
I mean, the Hertzberg case Senator Hertzberg case has been referred to the independent investigator. Harassment allegations where the victim is an employee or where there is a significant power disparity or a pattern of behavior that continues despite having been warned or grave concerns to me. Given the severity of the allegations against Senator Mendoza, I do not believe he can perform the duties in Sacramento right now, as we just mentioned a few moments ago, while the investigation is being conducted. I'm not prepared to say that about any other member right now.
Can you explain what is being investigated into Senator Mendoza? There's 3 different sets of allegations, going
All of the above.
Are you saying he's on a leave of absence too, or you're asking?
No, I'm not saying he's on a leave of absence. Going back to what was asked earlier today, I have informed him that I strongly suggest that he should take a leave of absence.
So no, but I think it's clear about again.
Is there still a relation, well,
Sorry, when will this investigation begin?
Immediately.
um,
Yes, yes.
is there still a relationship between the Senate and the firm of Amy Oppenheimer, and what is her role? And also, when she was brought on, there was some concern, how could a firm handpicked by the Senate, be trusted? And so if you could just explain what her role is and how the process that you've gone through now to select these firms is different.
Well, the request for proposal that was confirmed by the committee with Ms. Atkins, Ms. Bates, Mr. Monning, as well as Ms. Leva and Ms. Mitchell, concluded that Gibson, Dunn and Crutcher and Van de Meiden Maddox should be the firm, at least for the next 2 years, to handle these types of cases. Amy Oppenheimer will transfer those cases over to the new investigative body. I have nothing but good things to say. I don't know Miss Amy Oppenheimer. I've never met her. We wanted to keep an arm's length to make sure there was a firewall that was free from any type of political influence. We're taking this very seriously. I got to be honest in the sense that, we're taking this very, very seriously. So any type of influence with regards to the Senate Rules Committee selecting Ms. Oppenheimer, there's nothing there.
And can I add, if I may, Mr. Pro Tem?
Yes.
The one difference is her firm provided counsel to Rules Committee around best practices and provided advice and counsel in terms of actual policy. These two firms will be conducting investigations. And so that's the way we've separated, and that's the way that's their scope of work, is to conduct the investigation.
So are these resources, and is this hotline going to be available to people outside of, like lobbyists, for instance, because there are women who've come into the Capitol who have also said they were correct?
Yes.
What about people in the assembly? What if you get someone from the assembly calling?
Then, if we get, ideally, going back to what Melanie Mason had mentioned with regards to, ideally, this is going to be done in a bicameral manner. So if someone from the assembly calls in, then it'll be used for, both bodies. So it's going to be 1-800 number for both legislative bodies.
Senator, did you wait too long to deal with this issue? Could you have done more sooner? And with this happening under your leadership,
Say it again.
with some of this happening under your leadership, and how might it complicate your Senate run?
Well, I think that, when we saw the letter for the very first time on, I think it was October 8th from We Said Enough, I think maybe about 2 weeks shortly thereafter, we hired Ms. Oppenheimer, as well as an independent firm that could do an exhaustive assessment of this institution to provide us the necessary feedback of what we can do better, where we're lacking, where our weaknesses are, what strengths we have, and provide us with real objective, hard, constructive criticism that we need as an institution. So I think we moved on that immediately. What we didn't do as an institution, we didn't have hearings openly. That's different. We did a lot of work behind the scenes. With regards to, as it relates to me and obviously my run for the U.S. Senate, first things first. One is that we want to make sure this is a place where there is equity and justice for all women, for all employees, men and women. This is an opportunity to really change the culture of this legislative body in many ways. And with regards to politics, this has nothing to do with politics. And for those who perhaps over-politicize this situation, they do demean and do a disservice to those who are victims of sexual harassment, sexual misconduct, sexual assault. And they just do a disservice overall to this really prevailing issue in our country.
But I think it is a fair question to ask about, some of these allegations happening under your watch and how that plays into the question
Well, like I said, I think that when this is done, we're going to have the most far-reaching progressive overhaul when it comes to sexual harassment in the country. And it's my hope when this is done, you know, whatever the outcome is with regards to my race, when this is done, is that, you know, this will be a model for many legislative bodies, in fact, including the U.S. Congress and the U.S. Senate.
Senator, what are the terms of the deal? Is it a retainer? Is it hourly rate? Is it a certain amount of money? Obviously, it's taxpayer dollars, and it has to be. It's not like
Those are being worked out right now as we speak. We don't have that information, Ben, as of yet, but those are being worked out right now.
Point though, Senator.
I don't think those details are released.
Well, from Ms. Wagner, Ms. Maddox, some law firms do investigations, investigate, you know, your clients are either employers or employees. Is your experience generally with one side or the other? Just so you can understand?
So one of the reasons that Deborah Maddox and I paired, there were a lot of reasons. One of them was cost savings, which is one of the things that that was just asked about. The typical rate for her firm is much lower than mine, and as a combined effort, we are going to keep costs down. We also paired because we have different experiences. Gibson Dunn has conducted investigations on sort of all sides of issues, many different clients. We often have been on the defense side, but more commonly than litigation, our experience in investigations is conducting internal investigations which are designed often on behalf of an audit committee or an independent committee of the board to find out whatever the facts are and produce those so that so the issue can be resolved. Ms. Maddox, I'll turn it over to her to talk about her experience, but I know it's been in a variety of contexts too. So collectively, I think we've been involved in many different things. I just wanted to say one other thing also about the independence of Gibson Dunn. So we are, as I mentioned at the outset, we have over 1,000 attorneys. We've been around, we're a California-based firm. We've been around for decades. Certainly there are partners and associates at the firm who have given contributions to various senators. But that's something that we've discussed with the Senate staff. We certainly, nobody on this team is going to be giving any contributions to anybody. I personally don't know any of the state senators. I've met Senator De León today. I met him once before at an ethics briefing. I'm not personally friendly with any of the state senators. I haven't contributed to any state senators. And going forward, in fact, my history has been more like to investigate state senators. And I've been involved in public corruption cases against an assemblyman, for example, some years ago. So we are going to be very independent. We don't care where the evidence goes. We're going to follow it wherever it goes, no matter where it leads us. And let me turn it over to Deb. Yes. Yes. Yeah. So generally, how we're going to work is we are going to be a joint team throughout. Deborah and I are going to take different leads on different matters. So we are going to sort of deploy our collective resources for sort of each of us taking a lead on a particular matter involving a particular person. But generally, our teams are meeting this afternoon. We're meeting tomorrow with HR to get a download with them. We're going to be operating collectively throughout as a team.
And if I can just go back to your question about whether we represent yes, absolutely, whether we represent the employee or the employer, and it's neither. We view ourselves as neutrals. I like to think of it that we represent the facts, and our job is to do a neutral investigation, and the facts lead us where they lead us. So it's a very different role for an attorney. A lot of people think about an attorney in an advocacy role. This is not. This is a neutral role, and so the answer to your question is not technically either side. It's a neutral role.
Ms. Maddox, on that point, the Senate is your client. Isn't there attorney-client privilege to the work you do?
Yes.
Okay, so Mr. Pro Tem, can I ask you, as the client, you might want to go back to the mic for all of my audio friends.
Thank you, John, for instructing me.
Thank you. For your purposes being the client, how do you view the attorney-client privilege here? Are you willing to waive it in some cases? Are you willing to limit it? You talked about transparency with the public. These investigations, if they're subject to attorney-client privilege, we may never know exactly what comes of them.
Let me emphasize or really re-emphasize it. Let me lean into this. We're very serious about what is happening, John. The steps that we're taking are unprecedented when you measure them with other bodies, either in the public or in the private sector. To actually go through this process, not with bells and whistles, but actually real fundamental work to engage with amazing organizations like Weave and Calcasa to have a really victims trauma-centered approach to deal with this issue and change culture and to hire firms that will do this work, not us in the Senate Rules Committee, is a really concrete, measurable step that means that we are very serious in this approach. This is something unlike any other institution in the nation. And I believe that once we are done, and when I'm long gone, that we will take a very there will be a very seriously deep cultural change in this institution. Listen, I've been, as the leader of the Senate, I've been humbled by this experience. I've done my own deep self-reflection. And I have wondered, have I also contributed or been complicit collectively as men to this type of dynamic? And we see it with journalists who've been accused. We've seen it in the sports world, the entertainment world, the political world, in every sphere imaginable. And it has been a process of deep self-reflection for this institution to change the way it has conducted itself for decades, if not generations. This is real, and this is honest, this is deeply sincere. We'll learn things that, we should perfect it. Maybe we shouldn't have done it this way, we should have done it that way. It's an ongoing process as well. Engaging with the stakeholders, like I said, we said enough. We've engaged them to get a lot of the advocacy perspectives that are actually part of this process here today. And as the leader of the Senate, it has been a very humbling experience, and I admire the amazing courage and leadership that these women have demonstrated throughout the process.
Just to the question I asked, though, Senator, can you commit to a narrow version of attorney-client privilege? Is there any way that you can tell the public you will limit that attorney-client privilege to not stifle the ability to see what comes out of it?
That's always a possibility. I'll say that it's always a possibility. It's always a possibility. We just mentioned the issue with regards to Laura, where we're taking an unprecedented step with regards to Laura, to release information. Where's Laura? I read your letter. I read your letter very thoughtfully, and I think several other folks have sent letters too. I sat down with it, and I read it line by line. I internalized it. We didn't go through attorneys and go through, I just sat down with it. And I spoke with my staff also too, and that's when I made a decision. We're gonna do something, we're gonna break away with the tradition of this institution. And we're starting with Laura, where we're gonna release the information that has been requested. We're going to protect the victims. It's up to them ultimately if they want to share their own stories and their information.
Why hasn't that data been released so far, though, Senator? Some of us asked for it more than 2 months ago.
Well, it will be released now, John.
Okay, it's been 2 months, though.
Yeah, it'll be released now, John.
Is it time to get rid of Laura and have the legislature be subject to the California Public Records Act just like every other branch?
That'll be up to future leaders. Yeah.
No, for you. What do you think?
Now,
For the next year, you're a lawmaker.
well, let me sit down with that, okay? I'll sit down with that.
Senator, have you had a chance to respond to Senator Bates' letter regarding non-disclosure agreements in sexual harassment complaints?
Senator Bates's input has been really crucial, and I value her thoughts, her opinions. I think we've taken into account a lot of her suggestions that she has put forth, and they are actually reflective of this reform package that we have internally. Again, let me go back to what I had just mentioned maybe earlier with regards to non-disclosure acts. Any sexual harassment claims that have been substantiated, that information has either it's been released then or will be released, because I think it's part of the Laura request.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
He's referring to non-disclosure acts.
All the settlement agreements were discoverable under Laura, so you had every single settlement. So NDAs usually implies that information will not be released to the public. But in fact, there's long tradition here in the Senate, and I think it's true for the Assembly as well, to release the legal settlements, which is where the NDAs are.
I think the question comes with the victim being able to speak
legislation, yeah.
Public as well, not just the legislature.
Well, I can say this, for sexual harassment claims that have been substantiated, we don't have non-disclosure acts in the Senate side.
Senator, in terms of releasing the names of other lawmakers who have been investigated, is that something that's going to come in like a press release, or is it just going to be sent out specifically to people who put their request in? I mean,
That's a good question. I'm gonna be honest with you. I haven't thought that out yet. That's a good question. I haven't thought that out yet.
On NDAs, so I know of individuals who had reported sexual harassment. When they were let go, they signed NDAs. So you're saying that they wouldn't be signing NDAs if the claims had been substantiated, or if they're signing it before the claims are investigated? How does that work?
What you're making reference to one individual who initiated Mendoza, yes. My understanding, she was let go for performance issues, and then there was an NDA signage, and then immediately thereafter, when she was let go, then she submitted her claim. So it was a sort of a.
You're saying the NDA would not apply to her talking about the claim then?
I believe so. Well, you know, I'm not a lawyer. I want to be very careful how I answer that question. I know that she herself was not the victim, but allegedly she was the witness to alleged harassment. My understanding is that she was let go because of performance issues, and that's the standard for all performance issues. And immediately after she was let go, then she made the claim. Sí, sí, claro que sí. Bueno, hay algunos elementos que han pedido su renuncia del Senado. Como mencioné, las firmas de Gibson, Dunn & Crutcher, Van de Meiden, Maddox, que están presentes con nosotros, se van a llevar a cabo la investigación. Va a ser una investigación completa que ojalá el año entrante, al principio del año entrante, van a finalizar. Lo que yo estoy pidiendo es diferente. Lo que yo estoy pidiendo es nomás un, entre comillas, leave of absence, que no es una renuncia de su cargo como senador. Hay otros elementos que piden su renuncia. Ellos tienen sus opiniones, sus perspectivas. La mía es por lo tanto, hacia corto plazo, hasta cuando finalizan su investigación objetivamente, que toman, ¿no?, entre comillas, un leave of absence, un receso temporal. O sea, ¿mande?
¿Cómo ha respondido a esa petición?
Bueno, estamos hablando, estamos teniendo esas conversaciones. Thank you very much, everybody.